It's 12 o'clock, and you're watching KCCI Channel 8 Des Moines, Iowa's news leader, with Molly Cooney, Jason Hoffman, and meteorologist Mike Lozano. This is News Channel 8.
Vice President Al Gore arrives in Iowa today to talk about the state's meth problem and also to bring some help for pork producers.
Meanwhile, President Clinton heads to Detroit as the Senate finishes working out the details of his impeachment trial. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jason Hoffman.
And I'm Molly Cooney. Now, sometime within the next few minutes, the U.S. Senate is expected to vote on issuing the required summons to President Clinton.
Now, earlier this morning, Senate leaders came to an agreement on how the president's trial will be conducted when it starts next week. Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott says the agreement would have to be decided on a case-by-case basis. Lee Cowan joins us now from Washington.
Well, a partial agreement now seems to have been reached after a historic closed-door meeting this morning up on Capitol Hill with all 100 senators. As a result of that meeting, it looks as though that there is at least a partial agreement. The next step, of course, in that agreement is to take it to the full House for a vote on the Senate floor. That vote should happen sometime within the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. If, in fact, it passes, then the opening arguments in this trial could begin next Wednesday or Thursday. Much like the weather that greeted the president on his way to Detroit this morning, history for the moment seems frozen. After only a day, the impeachment trial of William Jefferson Clinton is at a dead stop. An agreement on just how to move forward still being molded in the back rooms of the Capitol. Today, the entire Senate met face-to-face in a more intimate atmosphere, the old Senate chamber where even microphones aren't required. Out of that historic meeting came the initial framework for the next step in the trial. The proposal calls for both sides to present their case first. Then, the Senate would take up the issue of whether to call witnesses.
The atmosphere was absolutely phenomenal. It was so positive. You could just feel history in the room.
But our expectation is that it's going to be an overwhelming bipartisan vote.
Now, the next part two of this emerging plan would essentially call for another bipartisan committee to be set up just to deal with the issue of witnesses. And although that part of the trial probably wouldn't take place at least for the next couple of weeks, we're told that committee is beginning work now in order to avoid delays later. That's the latest live from Capitol Hill this afternoon. Lee Cowan, back to you.
All right, Lee, thank you very much. Well, Vice President Al Gore is promising relief to struggling Iowa hog farmers. Gore
made the announcement this morning as he arrived in Des Moines. News Channel 8's Michelle Parker was there at the Des Moines International Airport when his plane touched down. She joins us now, and what did he have to say today, Michelle?
Well, Gore says this action needs to be taken because of the low hog prices that farmers have been facing in recent months. The help is going to be coming through direct cash payments to producers in Iowa and across the country. Gore says the U.S. Department of Agriculture will make $50 million in payments to family farmers. The vice president says details of the plan still have to be worked out, but the payments are expected to be made in the next several weeks. Gore pointed out that hog prices have been improving just recently, but says farmers still need help with living and operating expenses to make up for the losses they've already had.
I want to reassure pork producers and their families that President Clinton and I are on top of this situation. We are doing everything we can to help soften the blows and to get producers back on their feet, to get them through this extremely tough time so that they can survive, but even more than that, so that they can share in this nation's continuing prosperity.
Now, Gore also announced an emergency transfer of $80 million for the USDA's hog pseudo-rabies eradication program. And the vice president made this announcement right after he got off his plane this morning. He did not take any questions, but went on to his other appearances.
And again, a lot of hog farmers are going to be wondering about this. So basically, within the next few weeks, we're going to find out more details.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Michelle.
Well, the vice president's announcement of cash assistance for hog producers is just what one task force is calling for. Secretary of Agriculture Patty Judge convened the group, which recommended a short-term infusion of cash into the pork industry. The task force debated proposals ranging from airlifting hogs out of Iowa to using prison inmates as packing house workers to process the hogs, flooding the industry and keeping those prices low.
Meanwhile, the legislature plans on spending a good deal of the upcoming session discussing those low prices. The chair of the House Economic Development Committee says ag leaders are looking at ways the state and federal government can work together on an assistance program. But Governor-elect Tom Vilsack says he believes the hog pricing issue should be left to the market and the federal government. Well, Vice President Gore also came to Des Moines to talk about the state's methamphetamine problem.
After leaving the Des Moines airport, he traveled to Hyatt Middle School on the east side for a town meeting on that subject. Our teammate coverage of the Vice President's visit to Des Moines continues right now with News Channel 8's Cynthia Fodor, and she joins us live from Hyatt. Cynthia?
Well, Molly and Jason, hundreds of people gathered here this morning for this town meeting. Vice President Al Gore is still inside the school. As you can see, his motorcade is about to leave for the airport. Students were here, local, state, and national officials and lawmakers, all trying to find solutions to this meth problem.
We need to elevate awareness because there are still people here in Iowa who do not fully understand the deadly threat that is posed to these children, to the families of Iowa, to the social fabric of this state. It's posed by methamphetamines.
Vice President Al Gore announced a new program to beef up community efforts to fight the problem. He established a new National Advisory Commission to help develop citizen task forces around the country. And the group also heard from National Drug Czar Barry McCaffrey.
This is the worst drug, in my viewpoint, that has ever hit America. And I say that even though crack cocaine in the mid-1980s enslaved 3.5 million Americans. It was a disaster, and we didn't figure it out. We didn't see it coming. When we did see it, we didn't react in a very rational way, and it devastated America. It killed 100,000 people.
Now, there was a real give-and-take exchange here this morning between the Vice President and lawmakers and people in the audience. The consensus is the only way to fight this problem is with more education and more prevention problems in the school and to get more local